This is a video message to one of the most successful managers in the game. Now, what could I possibly say to Pep Guardiola to help him win the Champions League? Well, on recent history, probably quite a lot, because despite Man City's success, the Champions League has always been elusive to them. Pep's tactics in numerous high-profile games in the Champions League have continued to leave me dumbfounded. Not because of the tactics themselves, because who am I to tell Pep that going man for man with his Bayern team against Barcelona is a bad thing to do, or that playing Laporte in a completely new position on the left-hand side of defence against Mo Salah is a bad decision. Now, there are going to be reasons why he did this, and frankly, the man is a genius and knows the game inside out. However, there is a bigger failing in these tactical changes that is bigger than the tactical changes themselves. Even when they played Spurs a few seasons ago in the Champions League and they dropped Kevin De Bruyne, and he played a new system where Fabian Delph was used to mark Son. Again, there is a much bigger issue than the tactics themselves. Or what about when they went out the tournament against Lyon, when he changed his defensive tactics and he left several of his usual starters on the bench? Again, the tactics are one thing, but there is still another factor that will have a catastrophic impact. Now let's go to the 2021 final against Chelsea. Once again, Man City are overwhelming favourites, but again, there is another huge change in their approach. He drops Rodri and Fernandinho, who had played in more than 98% of Man City's game that season. They went for an unfamiliar approach where they had 5 attacking players, losing that familiar setup, the setup that had brought them success all season long. Now, what is really baffling for me with all of this, surprisingly, is not the tactical changes. Of course, they raised eyebrows. Everyone was a bit mystified in Pep's approach. But what baffles me, in a multi-billion-pound industry, at the very highest levels, there is no one there advising Pep of why any big changes would not allow his players to play to their best. It isn't the tactics, it is what is going on inside the brains of each of the players. City are a well-oiled machine. Every player knows his position, the part they play in his team, the runs they're expected to make, the responsibilities. Literally everything is directed by Pep and his coaching staff. Every intricacy is deliberate. The City players train and train and train more. All of this is conditioned and it's instinctive. For me, it is one of the reasons why we are now seeing Jack Grealish play so well this season compared to last season. He doesn't just know the role that he's expected to play. He is now trained and conditioned, so it's automatic and instinctive. He doesn't need to think what he's doing. He can now let his brilliance come out within the parameters of what Pep wants from him. And he can perform this now to the top of his capabilities. And here's the big thing. That automatic part of our brains can process over 2 million pieces of information at any one time. It is fast, it is effective, and it allows you to perform to the very limits of your trained capabilities. And you can do this without even really needing to think about it. It just comes out automatically. But if you now get Jack to play in an unfamiliar role, all of a sudden you're taking away that ability to utilize the automatic part of his brain. Now you're forcing him to think more consciously. He now has to think about his positioning, the players around him, what he's actually going to do with the ball. Now you're moving away from the unconscious part of the brain, that part that can process 2 million pieces of information at any one time, and now you're moving to the conscious part of the brain that can process about 20 pieces of information. Now, although you don't need to know the technical side of things, physically, what you're doing is you're taking away the electrical signals and the blood away from the areas such as the basal ganglia and the motor cortex. And what you're doing now is you're sending this to the methodical frontal cortex of the brain, where everything is slower and it's less effective. Not only is it slower and less effective, but it also uses more energy, and it makes it impossible to play to the limits of that trained ability. So if we now put this back into the context of all the examples that we've gone through, the Chelsea game, the Liverpool, the Lyon and the Spurs games, what Pep is doing here is he's treating his players and his tactics like chess pieces. The problem is that players are not inanimate objects. They have brains that are either being effectively or ineffectively utilized. He wants them to perform the new tactics like they've been performing the other tactics. However, the brain just does not work like this, and he should have been advised of this. We're not talking about League 2 or national level now. We are talking about the very top of the game. He should have been advised that this would not work because of how that brain of ours operates. But anyway, we've talked about the historical side of things. Let's look forward now to Man City against Inter Milan. Now, if Man City play to their best, they have the potential to absolutely thrash Inter Milan. I don't think anyone can really deny that. Man for man, they are better. There's no question. And they are set up brilliantly by perhaps the best manager in the world right now. Every player knows their position, and the brain of each and every player can go automatic and instinctive, utilizing the best parts of their brain to play their best game to the limits of how they're capable of playing it. But if Pep radically changes this, it's not just a leveler. It actually gives the advantage to Inter. All the advantages of having the best team who are currently playing at the best levels gets wiped out. It doesn't matter how good the tactics are, as you'll in effect be turning world-class players like Kevin De Bruyne into a good player. Jack Grealish, who's been phenomenal all season, it would be like making him play with a ball and chain. I still cannot get my head around how Pep did not have people around him telling him this information when he wanted to make these changes in all of those previous games. So Pep, yes, make subtle changes if you need to, but let the team that you've built go on and do the things that they're highly trained to do. Play to their limits, where they know the role inside out, where they can play to their strengths with the speed of thought, the speed of movement, and knowing everything that they need to do without needing to think about it. And that is what is going to take Man City to their first ever Champions League win.